Great.
Welcome back.
We have returned. From Davy Jones's locker, we have emerged with bread.
Otherwise known as we took a 5-minute break, went to the bathroom, and now we're here again.
But where's the fun in that, Erin? Where's the fun in that?
So anyway, welcome back, friends.
Welcome back indeed.
Welcome back to the Fic List.
Still coming to you from quarantine.
From quarantine. That hasn't changed in the last 7 minutes.
Erin, don't do this.
It's too late. It's happened.
Don't pull back the curtain.
Eh,
Don't pay attention to, what is the quote? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
too late. It's happening already. So
Have you ever heard that theory? I heard this theory once, and I've never been able to prove it because the moment I start thinking about it, it's like basically disproved. I heard a theory once. Someone says you can't go a whole day without coming in contact or hearing at least one Wizard of Oz reference.
that I've never heard.
And I've never been able to prove it because the moment I start thinking about Wizard of Oz, I'm like, oh shit, now I'm gonna be like, where's it?
Right.
Do I make the reference? So it's just interesting. I've never been able to prove it, but if anyone else has, please let me know.
It's kind of like the yellow car or like red car theory where it's like, yeah, you'll see a red car every day if you're looking for a red car.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So perhaps it is one of those things. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
That's a good point.
Well, we made one, so we just reset the counter to 0 for everybody for their, last time I heard a Wizard of Oz reference.
There you go. We give you a freebie, guys. This is your freebie.
This episode is not about the Wizard of Oz.
But boy, don't you wish it was.
Yeah. Wouldn't that have made a lot more sense to do as an intro?
Listen, we go with what we feel like. We are on a boat. We go with the waves. We follow where life leads us.
Try harder, Alan.
Listen, Erin.
We're talking about pirate AUs, friends.
Hey.
Hey.
Yeah, that's why I'm throwing in all these awful nautical references.
The ship to end all ships.
We're all on the boat together now.
Oh, God. Never do that again. If I hear that one more time from a celebrity, I'm going to puke.
Oh, God, it's truly the worst. Ellen, I don't need to hear about how you're bored in your fucking $10 million house. I need you to shut up.
Not in this Pride Month. Thank you.
No,
Don't do
not
this
in
to
my
me.
Pride month. Not my pride.
No, not about it. Anyway, we don't have to go down that path because it just will legitimately make me angry. But
Mm-hmm.
we are talking about pirates and pirates AUs. And I'm thrilled by this because I love pirate AUs. I think they're so fun. I think it's rare that you find a good one. So when you do find a good one, you gotta like lean in and
Accurate.
like download that shit and save it forever because
Accurate.
it is hard to pull off well. But when it is done well, mwah, chef's kiss. It's perfect.
While we're here, Erin, why don't you tell me what to you is like, what makes up the recipe to a really good pirate AU?
Oh.
Or what do you look for in a good pirate AU?
It is all about the world building.
Yeah,
Like,
that's very
it is
important.
all about the world being built there. Like, there are different types of pirates. There are different historical eras that you can place pirates in. It could be modern. It could be historical. I don't care. But I have to, like, really fully understand the world in which these characters live. And I want it to be, like, pirates are about, like, swashbuckling.
Yeah.
Adventure. I want there to be drama. I want there to be angst. I want there to be...
Dear Lord.
a sword fight. I want there to be at least one sword fight. And
Yeah.
so help me God, if you don't make out on a sail somewhere, I'm going to be so angry. But it's like, it's so heightened, right? Like pirate AUs and
Yeah.
like anybody who came of age during Pirates of the Caribbean era, it's so that high drama, like high storytelling romance,
Yeah.
like fanciful, like I want to be like swept on this adventure with these characters.
You almost hear like the background the background songs to Pirates of the Caribbean.
I want a goddamn sea shanty.
I want to see Shanty.
Give it to me.
Yeah, that's
So-
that's really good. I would agree with all of that.
Yeah. So who wants to start?
I think you have to start, Erin. What did I send you?
You sent me a Pirate AU fic called Kamikaze
Yep.
from an orphan account.
Yeah.
So we can't give credit, unfortunately, but it is an orphan account. It is a Dan and Phil thing. Fanfic. That's the word.
Yep.
That's what we talk about.
That is what the show's about.
And the summary reads, for most pirates, the Isle of Riches would sound very appealing. Not for Dan, who got too close to it and witnessed its secrets. Months later, he gets himself taken prisoner aboard Phil's ship. He's obnoxious, flirty, and generally a pain in the ass to all on board. But when he gets injured and is forced to let his guard down, Phil finds that Dan isn't all that he makes himself out to be. I don't want to be an asshole. But I did not care. I know. Well, this is who I am as a person. I've also just eaten, so perhaps I will be kind. I don't think so, though. I was not thrilled with this fic.
I get that.
The story at its core is basically, it starts with Dan living kind of like rough and tumble on the streets of some portside town. He was a pirate. His crew went to go find the Isle of Riches, but he had information or knew that they were gonna like, he got some sense that it was a bad idea, abandon ship, and they all died. So now he's like living with this guilt or whatever. And then he decides to go steal some food from Phil's pirate ship and gets taken prisoner and made to do chores.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where I learned very quickly that I was going to be disappointed by the terms of this fic. It read as really young to me.
Okay.
And it was very like, well, like Phil has this whole moment of like, well, crew, what are we going to make him do? And everyone was like, maybe he should have to like walk the plank, or maybe he should have to like do a stupid dance or something. And someone was like, make him do chores. And they were like, yeah, that's the worst possible thing that we could do. And I was like, are you 7?
Okay. Usually I wait for your reviews to end, but you can be serious. Like, that's clearly because of the character. That's how Phil is.
Then the fact that I do not watch Dan or Phil YouTube videos was a serious problem.
Yeah, it's just so interesting to me that's you. Like you would read that and think, oh, someone literally doesn't know what pirates do. Like, oh, okay.
It's not that they didn't know what pirates do. It's just the stakes were never high. And like,
yeah, that's
like
fair.
I just said,
I will give you that.
I want pirate AUs to be a little dangerous, and this was so sanitized. Like, there was never a moment of real danger.
Sure. Like,
that to me is disappointing, and that's not to say that this is like poorly written or anything like that. It just really did not fulfill the terms of what I wanted from a pirate AU.
Yeah. And
I pretty much exclusively come to pirate AU for the element of danger, the potential for angst, the potential for, some really high tension drama, and this just never had that. So it was like, I was reading it and I was like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like it. So it's fine. To continue on. So Dan, basically it's a 3-part, pretty short fic.
Yes. Dan
becomes a prisoner aboard the pirate ship and is made to like do chores and stuff. And then during that process, he sort of flirts with Phil and is kind of a little pain in the ass, as the summary would imply. Although even that was fairly like, it was very chipper. And I was like, what is this? And then he like snooped around a little bit, and then there was a fight between them and another pirate ship, and Dan happened to acquire the second half of the map to the Isle of Riches. Phil has the first half of the map, and Dan knows that because he was snooping around. But the other half comes to Dan during this fight, and he finds it, and then he sort of like turns it over in a moment to like barter his freedom. So he's allowed to stay with the pirate crew, but he is no longer like, actually a prisoner. Like, he doesn't have to sleep in the hold anymore or anything like that. So then they decide they're going to go to the Isle of Riches, and it's fine. At one point, Dan gets a concussion, and he's like hurt, and Phil puts him in his cabin and like takes care of him, and they're just like looking into each other's eyes, and Dan talks about how blue his eyes are all the time.
Because they're like the sea.
So many sea.
Because it's like the sea, Erin.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, and I was like, sure. Fine, I have to be on board with this because I have to read this. Then Dan opens up about having abandoned his crew and how he feels really responsible for that, and how they had been going to the Isle of Riches and he's worried about Phil. And then basically like Dan opens up completely about what had happened to him and like why he didn't go with them, and then they died. He felt really responsible for it, and Phil was like, well, thank you for telling me. Like, I'm kind of glad you got hurt because we would have never had this conversation if you hadn't.
Yeah.
And Dan's like, yeah. And then they kind of like, they start to get a little like romancy, but then they like the moment falls apart or whatever. And they're very clearly like heading towards some kind of romance. And then so Dan is like, so the crew of my last ship died because it's a really shallow trip to the Isle of Riches. And Phil's like, well, why don't we just take small boats? And I'm like, guys, how is he the first person to think of this? How? How?
No one ever thought of it.
How?
But it's also like no one knew. Dan knew because he had made the journey before.
I didn't get that.
Well,
like, it was presented without the sort of like drama, like the narrative. It was just kind of like, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. So like, I was mad at it. So then it feels like, all right, small boats. And Dan's like, cool, good idea. And then they go to a bar, and the bartender's like, no one's thought of small boats before. It's a good idea, though. Good job. So they go get the boats from the man who sells the boats. And then Phil decides, they go back to their cabin, and they make out. And they're drunk, so they pass out before anything really happens. And then in the morning, Dan is like, oh no, bad news bears. But Phil is like, I'm good. I mean, I'm hungover as shit, but like, it's cool. And then Dan's like, I'm gonna run. Like, I gotta go, bye.
Yeah.
And then Phil catches up with him eventually. And Dan's like, I'm sorry I ran. And Phil's like, I want to stay. You should stay with me. You don't have to run. And then Phil is like, I told the crew to go ahead of me without me to the Isle of Riches because I needed to come find you and I had something more important. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no good pirate captain would ever abandon their crew, but continue. There are laws of the sea, Alan. You need to not follow them.
Sure.
And then
what I'm learning today is that you apparently are a pirate. You know so much.
Yeah. So the last sort of scene of it is them 9 months later. They are together. They're having a grand old time. And Dan is like, do you regret not having gone to the Isle of Riches? And Phil's like, no, it turned out that it wasn't the Isle of Riches anyway. Just that the food was rich. Nothing to do with money. And I'm like, this is profoundly stupid. I wanted it to be a joke.
Yeah, I really, really, really disliked the ending.
Yeah. So it wasn't fulfilling narratively for me. And
sure.
If we're talking about pirate AUs and talking about world building, there's virtually no world building in this.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's mostly just like there's a port town. It's relying on your stereotypes of pirate stories to fill in the blanks.
Right.
And presumably your understanding of these two people, which I have none of. So it did not resonate for me in a good way.
Yeah.
And I really did not enjoy my time reading this fanfic. Perhaps it is good that it's an orphan account because I don't want to be a jerk. But this did not meet my very high expectations for pirate AUs.
Evidently. I think this has happened a few times because so when we choose tags, we don't talk about like, oh, what do we look for? Because I feel like it's limiting. And also Erin is trying to please Erin is just like going to be the death of me. So I just don't want to know. But this comes from a place of like, you have very specific, like, this is what a pirate AU is. And I was like, oh.
Please tell me
I didn't go there.
This isn't the fic that you wrote. Because you're going to do that to me someday. And I would be
I know. I
devastated.
detested that ending. I would never. Absolutely not.
Good.
That's hilarious, though.
I don't think this is yours,
No.
but if it was, I would have been so upset.
That would have been hilarious. No, I could. Okay. So I agree with all of everything you said, minus the thing I've already addressed with Phil. Yeah, I didn't think it was very narratively strong. Really detested the ending. Again, I read quite a few pirate AUs. I think I would have had more luck if I had made the decision to actually delve into like the novel length fics, of which there are many. Here's my thing. Most times I don't really enjoy world building. To me, I'm like, I get it, but I'm much more about the plot and about how the characters interact with that world. And I enjoy world building in that sense, but to me a lot of times like world building becomes like Lord of the Rings, where it's like, oh, and then we reference this and we reference this deity and then we reference the old tale of and it's like, oh my god, that's just so much. And so I just didn't have it in me to like read an 85,000 word fic about pirates. I realized as I was reading, I was like, wow, I guess I just don't like pirates as much as I thought I did. Like, I like it as a premise. It's just, to me, I'm like, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This is going to be one of those disappointing tags, isn't it? It's going to be one of those ones where we're like, oh, shit.
Well.
I hope you like the one I sent you.
Should we move on to that?
I didn't.
Or do you have any last thoughts about
I
this?
didn't rate this yet.
Oh, you have to rate it. That's right.
I'm sorry, but this is a 1 out of 5.
Yeah. That's fair.
This perhaps would be better for somebody who really likes Dan and Phil and is willing to overlook some of the narrative elements of it because they're just enjoying their life and want to read about and can really picture them in these roles.
Yeah, this definitely falls into that thing we were talking about last time where it's like the Barbie dolls and you're just like kiss, 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 kiss.
Yep, which is fine. Yeah. It's just not for me, which is totally cool. But for me, it's a 1 out of 5 because I just,
That's absolutely fair.
Cool. So on that kind of sad note, what did I send you, Alan?
Sure. So Erin sent me, let me just pull it up, a fic titled Saltwater by mtothedestiel?
Destiel, yeah.
Destiel.
Which is a reference to Supernatural, the TV show.
That's what I figured, but I had no clue. This is an archive of our own, and it... Ladies and gentlemen, folks, we made it counted 1 episode before the magicians made an appearance. You
told me I could have one.
Someone can someone go to the it's been 1 day since a magician fanfic appeared sign and just rip that one off? We're back to 0.
Yep, we are fully back to 0. I'm fully back on my bullshit, and I regret nothing. So.
Yes, indeed, this is another Quelliot fic. The summary reads: Elliot Waugh is a pirate king looking for a doctor to serve on his ship. Quentin Coldwater is a doctor. Although he's more of a naturalist than a surgeon, he's about to be offered a new job. I fucking loved this. It was so God. Good. I loved it. And as I read this, I was like, oh, she's going to hate me.
Yep.
I was like, as I was reading, I was like, oh, I understand now where her bar is for this. And I wasn't close. So,
and it's high. It's real fucking high.
Absolutely. This has everything you talked about. I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so kind of a brief overview. We start off with Elliot and his ship, which is called...
It'll make sense. It's a show thing.
Oh, fuck me. Well, then, can you just tell me? Because I don't know. It's
the White Spire.
White Spire, that's right. Yeah, so Elliot is the High King of the White Spire. And we begin our story with the White Spire having taken over the HMS Ellsworth, which is a smaller ship in which Quentin has been just kind of existing in like a lower cabin of some sort. He's a doctor, but he's not being really used because he's a naturalist, which means he basically uses natural remedies and herbs and all that kind of stuff as opposed to chemical medicines. So the story begins there, and it happens that... So this is the one thing I was kind of confused about, was someone finds Quentin, and they're like, is your last name Coldwater? And he's like, yeah, I'm Quentin Coldwater. And then the pirate is like, we got him. And so Elliot comes, and he's like, great. Hey, I need a doctor. So here's your options. You either stay on the ship and sink, or you come on my ship and be my doctor and then possibly die later. But who knows? If you do a good job, maybe.
Maybe we don't kill you?
Maybe we don't kill you. And so Quentin does what every rational human being would do and goes on the boat. Also, when Hale Appleman in full pirate regalia is telling you, hey, you want to come be on my ship? You go.
The things I would give for Hale Appleman in a pirate movie. I'm not proud.
Listen, I get it. I absolutely get it. So Quentin goes, and we kind of start to figure out some things about him, and that he's been in mourning for 2 years because his fiancée Alice died, and so he's been kind of very numb, though he describes it, very like kept to himself and hasn't really been living. And we understand as a reader that this is his mental illness taking hold. And so he starts his practice aboard the White Spire, and none of the pirates trust him. Like, none of them want to take his medicine. They're like, don't touch me. And Quentin is like, listen, I need to set this bone or it's going to grow crooked and you're going to be in pain. So shut the fuck up and come here.
Yeah, let me do the thing.
He's not that furious.
Right. Well, he's also very gentle. Like, he's a quiet dude. So he's
very
please,
quiet. But
please. But he's also kind of snarky.
One thing I really appreciated about Quentin here is that he kind of stood up for himself pretty immediately, though. Mm-hmm. He was like, hey, I get it. Like, I'm new and all this stuff, but I need to do this because that's my job as a doctor. So, like, he was very no nonsense, which I really liked about this Quentin. I was like, ooh, Yes, we love her.
He knows his shit, and he knows it too.
Yeah. And so Quentin and Elliot started a rapport where everyone basically refers to Elliot as my king or captain or some sort of, honorific. And Elliot tells Quentin, when you are in my stateroom, you may call me Elliot. Mm-hmm. We are people, which is like first sign of like, well, oh.
And it definitely comes from this thing where Quentin is like pretty convinced he's going to die at every corner.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's like, oh, I'm going to get killed for putting something wrong in the wrong cabinet or something. Like I'm gonna really just like fuck up and be dead at any time. And Elliot's like, no, like that's not what meeting the king's justice means. You need to chill out.
Yeah.
We're just two dudes. And we're just dudes being dudes. But also I'm still your king, so like this can't go too far. But like that's where that comes from.
It also comes from a point of Quentin not really understanding how he was brought on, like in what capacity. He was like, oh, am I a prize? Like at one point Elliot is like, oh, we're gonna go celebrate, you should come, after like you were the big prize today. And Quentin is like, oh great, glad to know like what my capacity is here, Captain. And Elliot is like, wait, shit, no, fuck. And so, but of course he doesn't say that because he's a captain, he's king. Mm-hmm. And so we have a nice like chapter and a half of Elliot just being like, man, I really fucked up that first conversation with Quentin.
Yep.
And it's just so funny. We kind of have Margot as his queen, the Blood Queen, which is amazing. She has an eye patch. She lost an eye. Is that canonical?
Yes, that is from the show. So in the show, she loses an eye to the fairies. Basically, the way it's very much like fairy lore. There's a situation where she needs to make a deal with the fairies, and they take one of her eyes as payment.
Okay, cool. I was just like, interesting, but great. Good to know it fits somehow.
Or we just really want Summer Bishel and an eye patch.
Listen, I was here for the eye patch. I was just like, is this a creative choice or is this canonical?
It was canonical.
Now I know.
Yeah.
We dash forward a little bit. Quentin is still very like butthurt about the whole being a prize, being a possession, which is fair. Elliot is asking Todd, which this was the thing that I was like, because Elliot hates Todd, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Which was not, there was no animosity here. And then usually
I was willing to overlook it.
Yeah. Listen. I know, but I'm going through it, and these are my little complaints.
Okay.
My little like nitpicks. Mm-hmm. I was like, I've read enough. I've been around the block. I've read enough Magicians fanfic to know that Elliot does not like Todd in any iteration. So this was like very interesting that they were like chummy. I mean, because Todd is his one of his men, so it makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so Elliot is checking in with Todd, like, hey, how's he doing? And Todd is like, well, the men still don't trust him, but in fact, there's someone in there with him now who is like got hurt earlier today, like pulled his back or something, and he's refusing to take the medicine. So Elliot goes down there. And he walks in on Quentin being like, look, I can't make you take it, but it's going to hurt. And this is going to make it so much easier. And so Elliot basically is like, listen, give me that bottle. And he drinks it. And he's like, all right, now let's talk for 15 minutes. And if I don't die, if I haven't been poisoned, then you'll be fine. And the pirate is like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And they talk for 15 minutes about, shooting the shit. And then once they've like established that Quentin is not trying to poison anyone, the pirate takes the medicine gratefully and is hauled away. And so that's kind of like, that's Quentin be like, hey, thanks for that, because Quentin really wants to build that trust with people where he can do his fucking job. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. Then after that, and throughout this whole thing, we kind of have Quentin and Elliot like stealing furtive glances from each other, like, oh, he's staring at me, look down, and so forth. So just sprinkle those in throughout everything. We cut to Idri and his ship coming in onto the White Spire, and like it's like, oh, Idri and Elliot go and negotiate things while Margot and Idri's son have like a whole ass duel, and like they sit at a table and they like actually iron out the numbers while Idri and Elliot are just fucking in Elliot's cabin.
Bless.
But yeah, I mean, so that happens, and so Quentin is now like having very naughty dreams about Elliot, and
aren't we all?
It's just this whole mess. Truly.
Please tell me you're not going to skip over maybe my favorite scene of this whole fic.
Well, hang on now. I feel... Oh. Well, fine. I guess great. So shortly after Idri and the Lorians leave the White Spire, Elliot is in a great fucking mood. He's had banging sex for the first time in God knows how long. And so he's like, one morning, Quentin comes out and he sees Elliot basically sword fighting with every one of his fucking men. Like, come on, who's next? Come on up. And like all of them are like, oh, ha, 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 ha. It's actually really cute and endearing. There's Matthews, this older pirate who gets his ass handed to him, and Elliot's like, you almost had me. And Matthews is like, no, not at all. And he's like, and Elliot is like, well, you can't blame me for trying to build morale.
Yep.
It's really great. And then he sees Quentin and he asks Quentin, so what training do you have? And hang on, they've got this really great double entendre moment, right?
I live for a homoerotic sword fight in Pirate AU because, oh my god, it is so good.
Oh yeah, so Elliot finishes like beating Matthew's ass, and he looks at Quentin and says, did you enjoy the bout, Doctor? And Quentin says, oh, you're very good, Captain. And Elliot replies, well, crossing blades has always been a pastime near and dear to my heart. And he winks as he says it. Then Quentin, poor baby Quentin, tries his best to like also be like, me too, and says, I have no doubt I learned to fence as well in school. Mm-hmm. And the double entendre doesn't really land, but it does tell Elliot that Quentin has some sword training. And so this leads into what is described as a pretty even battle, but apparently ends up just being Elliot kicking ass anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
and ends with Elliot's sword up against Quentin's neck as his chest is pressed behind his back.
I swoon.
And then Elliot murmurs into Quentin's ear, do you yield? And Quentin like grins and says, never. And it's like, what? Like, listen, I think in this fic particularly, Quentin has like a backbone that I don't really see in other fics, like right off the bat, and I loved it. I was here for it. They were on even playing fields, like they were equals, and I was like, yes, yes, yes. It was good.
Yeah.
That was a really good moment.
Great. I was going to be really sad if we didn't talk about the homoerotic sword fight, because holy shit, did I love that scene.
Yeah, then we have some scenes with him and Margot talking about how Elliot really wants to sleep with Quentin, or really wants Quentin, and Margot just being like, just do it. And Elliot being like, I can't. And Margot being like, okay, well, I'm going home because I can't hear you bitch anymore.
Which is very on brand for Margot.
Yeah. So Elliot's going to go to bed, and he shares a very thin wall with Quentin's cabin. And so as he's laying down to go to bed, he hears like soft moaning from the other side of the wall, and Elliot just presses his ear up to the wall, like, what is it? And so he hears Quentin moaning Alice, and he's like, oh, okay, cool. And then right after that, moaning the end of Elliot's name, so Liet. And then you hear some moaning, and Elliot is like, he's dreaming about me. And then Quentin wakes up, and you hear him masturbate. And then it just sparks this whole moral dilemma for Elliot, who wants to get with Quentin, but is afraid that Quentin thinks that he would have to sleep with Elliot because he's the king. Mm-hmm. Which is like, yeah, that makes sense, especially because you fucked up on your first interaction and called him your prize. Mm-hmm. Hot tip, everyone. People don't like it when you refer to them as property.
Right. Weird how that works.
Says the one who loves all this possessive shit.
Uh-huh.
We won't go there.
We don't have to worry about it today, Alan. We don't have to therapize ourselves today. We can just talk about fanfic.
It's true. Yeah, so then we move forward like a week or so, and Quentin has really gotten the hang of it. He's like going to dice games on Tuesday nights. Like, he's getting the hang of it. People know him and they're trusting him a little more. And that's when it happens. They just got like a mark, and they've got this whole loot that they've gone through, and it's basically all really fancy fruit. And he's outside like drawing the fruit because that's his research, kind of figuring out what the medicinal properties of plants are. And he hears like a commotion, and he runs over, and he finds out that one of the pirates has started to convulse and isn't getting air. And so Quentin is like, fuck, all right, someone give me like a round tube straw thingy, the smallest thing you can find immediately, and a knife. And so he performs an emergency tracheotomy, which is like, holy shit. And he's freaking out. And they get some air going through him, but not enough, because he realizes that what's happening is the pirate is allergic to the fruit he just took a bite out of. Mm-hmm. And presumably this is a timeline in which they don't know that people are just born with aversion to fruits and to food, because they don't say, oh, he's allergic. There's just like, he was born with this condition that he can't eat that particular fruit. So there was no way of saving him because he was going into anaphylactic shock. And the pirate like understands what's happening and like gives away like his trinket, like a little necklace, to another pirate, and it's like, oh, like, and the other pirate gets it. It has to go to his daughter, and it's like this really sweet moment where everyone's like, you know, at least it wasn't like at the end of a rope and something like that. You're surrounded by your friends, and it's wonderful. Well, not wonderful.
A man
but it's
is
really
dead,
touching.
Alan.
I meant touching. It's a really touching moment. But then that really triggers Quentin's whole moment of like, I couldn't do anything. A man died because I couldn't do anything. And he starts to just spiral. And part of it is that like he thinks that Elliot is not going to find him useful anymore and is going to kill him. Mm-hmm. That's part of it. And he's like, I don't know that I can live with seeing Elliot like not smile at me, or like to see Elliot's cold eyes after I've known how warm they can be. So this is actually a good moment to give a content warning, because this is going to get pretty heavy, and we're going to talk about some suicidal ideation now. So if that's something that is triggering to you or you don't feel comfortable listening to, skip ahead a few, like 4 or 5 minutes, and we'll see you on the other side. So this triggers his suicidal thoughts, and so Quentin like starts writing like sorry notes to Elliot and like to Todd, who like he was saying like, oh, thanks for being really kind to me, and ends up not being able to write anything. He sits in his cabin for hours until the sun sets. It's fully evening, and he just hasn't moved. His neck hurts. He's like full on panicking. He takes his boots off and he leaves them there because he's like, well, no use wasting a good pair of boots. Someone else can use them. And he walks to a part of the like starboard and gets on the railing and is holding on to like literally 6 inches. He's standing on 6 inches of wood, on 6 inches of railing, and he's like gearing himself up to jump when he just hears like tap 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 from behind him, and all of a sudden it's Elliot like peeking over and like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Being like super soft and like very nice and gentle, and like approaching him like head down, like, hey, please come down from there, you know. And he came out in like his like robe and barefoot, so it's clearly like someone warned him what was happening. He ran out. Mm-hmm. And he's able to talk Quentin down, thankfully. And Quentin, you know, tells him what happened with Alice, which is that, so he talks about how the pirate Thomas, who died, was born with this disease or with this condition inside of him. And he's like, and I kind of have something like that too, except it affects my brain, and it makes it so that things get numb and I can't control anything. Like I don't exist. And he was talking about how he was engaged to be married to Alice, and he was excited about it, but he kept having these numb moments, and he couldn't understand it because he's like, I thought love would kind of fix it, and it didn't. So he wanted to take like a few days, like a few day trip to just like clear his head. And Alice like begged to go with him. He's like, because she was like, hey, we're going to be partners. Please let me go with you. And he was like, no, I want to do this alone. So he goes, and then a few days later gets a letter saying that Alice developed a really high fever, and unfortunately no one caught it in time, and she died. Mm-hmm. And he just really kicking himself because he's like, I should have noticed. Like, I noticed she was really flushed when we were having our last conversation, but I thought it was just because of the emotions. She wouldn't come out and see me when I left, but I thought that's because she didn't want to see me, as opposed to she was too sick to get out of bed. And it's this really like awful guilt that's been weighing him down, and you're like, wow, that's a lot he's been dealing with. And you understand why losing the pirate today really just took a toll on him. Mm-hmm. What I really, really appreciate was that Elliot didn't do that thing where people are like, hey, it wasn't your fault. There's no way you could have known. There's nothing you could have done. He literally says, all right, fine then. It was your fault. And Quentin is so shocked. He's like, wait, what? And Elliot's like, listen, I have the blood of dozens of men on my hands. Why should I lie and say yours are clean when it isn't what you want to hear? And it's like, you might have saved her. You acted selfishly and you weren't there to do it. You have sinned against God, Quentin Coldwater. Shall I absolve you? Yeah. And it's this really wonderful moment where you realize like Elliot really sees who Quentin is, and he isn't like putting up like any kind of facade around it. And it's so wonderfully touching. And like, you're like, I cried. I was like, no.
Well, what I love about that moment too is that that's the moment where Quentin is like, that's not how it works. And Elliot's like, right, you're a doctor. This is what happens. Like, you can't hold on to this. Mm-hmm. And Quentin's like, well, I can't let it go because it's not about reason or logic. It's about this thing that's in my brain. You know, I'll always have this problem. And he's like, oh, this is the line that gets me, and I want to talk about it. But, like, you know,
okay,
it's
great.
If that makes me useless to you, he says, tracing a knot on the board under his knees, then go ahead and kill me. And Elliot says, no, I don't think I will. And I just love that that's a turning point for their relationship, where Quentin has been so... afraid isn't the right word, but like he's been operating under this auspice of like, I am a prisoner. I am not of equal footing here, as much as like Elliot tries to. And as soon as I become useless to him, I am good as dead.
Yeah.
And I think this is the moment where they reckon with that and have that moment of like, we are for real two people who are having a real conversation and like being honest with each other in a very profound way. And Elliot gives him that opportunity to be like, I have no intention of harming you. And he basically welcomes him into the fold, in my opinion, in this scene. Like, this is when Elliot is like, no, you're one of us.
Yeah, it's really heartwarming. So during this conversation, basically Quentin asks, hey, like, can you tell me what happened to your last doctor? And Elliot's like, well, I killed him.
Yeah, this does not actually, help with the whole I'm not going to kill you thing, however.
Yeah, he was like, all right, well, poor example, I killed him.
Yeah.
You kind of find out why is that the old doctor, so they had a really young sailor, like a stowaway or something that they found. And he got really hurt during a mission, or what do they call it? Like a pirating,
like a raid or something.
Like a swashbuckling thingy. He got hurt. This 14-year-old boy got hurt, and so they sent him down to the doctor. And because he was 14, like everyone was like, he was like a baby. He was like a favorite essentially. And so Elliot went down to check to see on how he was, and he found that the doctor had drugged him and had the 14-year-old boy like half undressed, and so he just killed him. Brought him out to the, whatever they call it, the deck, and just slit his throat.
Yep. And you maybe don't know this, but that character, Plover, is the author of the fillery books in the show. And in season 1, Quentin, they discover that he had been a pedophile. Like, that was the thing that happened. And that led to the creation of the villain in season 1, the Beast, who is Martin Chatwin, and all this kind of stuff. So Elliot just like mercilessly killing him was very great for anybody who watches the show, because one of the shitty things about the show is that character keeps coming back and he keeps surviving, and they keep giving him like stuff to do in the show, and like he pops up every once in a while. And like, for a show that really likes, I'm gonna get really mad about it if I keep going into this, but like for a show that's killed off basically all of their queer characters, and like they always talk about how like Quentin's death is permanent and like nothing, we have to deal with grief, and like you don't get a second chance. For them to keep bringing back the fucking pedophile character is enraging to the audience in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So this moment of like, oh well, I killed him was like very cathartic.
Yep. That's fair.
Yeah,
I can see that. Yeah.
Anyway, we don't have but just so you know.
Yeah, so basically Quentin now knows why no one would take his medicine, because no one trusted him. And so, this is that whole passing of the torch, like, hey, you're one of us now.
But also Quentin is like, good for you for killing him. I wish you had made him suffer.
Yeah.
And Elliot's like, cool. Great. We're on the same page.
Yeah. Then the following 2 weeks or so, everyone is just being like super attentive to Quentin, where he has essentially no free time. Everyone's like, hey, you want to come play cards on Thursday? Hey, can you help me like count these things? Hey, can you come try out this new recipe I'm developing? And Quentin goes to Elliot and he's like, hey, call off your people. Stop. And Elliot's like, you're going to have to deal with the fact that they are fond of you.
Yeah.
And it's a really nice moment where he's like, oh.
Yeah, I haven't asked them to watch you at all. Like, this is just them being like, hey, Quentin, buddy.
Yeah, it's so sweet.
Yeah.
So then cut into Margot coming and be like, hey, can you help me take inventory of this new stock we got? And he's like, okay. And it's all clothes, like from a fancy nobleman or whatnot. Then they're going through things, and Margot finds this like really nice blue coat essentially for Quentin. She's like, hey, I'm tired of looking your old rags are offending my royal eyesight essentially. And this is a big moment because Quentin's coat, it has like a black lined collar and like black lined.
It's a morning jacket.
It's a morning jacket, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, granted, he's been in mourning for 2 years,
right.
So it would, make sense. But this is a big moment because this is him being like, I'm actively moving on. Mm-hmm. So he takes the jacket from Margot, but he cuts off the collar. He cuts off the collar of his morning jacket and then kind of sews it onto like a seam at the shoulder. Mm-hmm. He's like, it's to remember, that I'm moving on, and it's so sweet. And of course it fits him beautifully, and it's like, it fits his complexion, and of course Elliot can't take his eyes off him, and it's the best. That's a fan fiction like trope that you can pry out of my cold dead hands.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so good.
It's so good. So we kind of hit the denouement. Or no, is denouement the last thing, or is that the rising action?
No, that's denouement is sort of the wind down.
Oh yeah, then I'm wrong. We get to like the inciting incident, what is leading up to the climax, the rising action, where we have this new ship called the Our Lady Underground, which is technically part of the same kingdom as White Spire. Like the King Elliot is still like presiding over them, but like they do their own thing, like they do a different faction or whatnot. And this is run by Penny, Katie, and Julia, because they're that throuple.
Bless. I love that ship.
Yeah,
Continue.
it's amazing. That ship, the Our Lady Underground ship.
No, the Penny Katie. Well, yeah, you're hilarious. But Penny Katie and Penny 40 specifically for show listeners, Penny 40 and Katie and Julia as a ship is like, it's like God tier.
Incredible. So the Our Lady Underground crew has come to ask Elliot for help because they finally hunted down this guy that they've been searching for. What's his fucking name?
Reynard the Fox.
Thank you. They finally found where Reynard the Fox is going to be, and so they're asking for backup, essentially. And so Elliot is like, of course, we'll do it. Do you want to throw in who Reynard the Fox is now?
Sure. Reynard is also a villain from early on. He is a trickster god who, again, for content warning for sexual assault, he tricked Julia and her hedge coven into basically summoning him and then wound up murdering and cannibalizing her coven and sexually assaulting Julia and leaving her for dead.
Dear Lord.
Julia wound up pregnant from that assault.
No.
And that was a major part of her character arc. She went on a revenge quest to get Reynard and kill him. And in that sort of process, lost a lot and suffered a lot. It's like, it's a whole thing. But it's a deeply traumatic storyline for Julia. Like, it is very, very dark, and it's very, very traumatizing for her. So to have Reynard the Fox be the thing that, like, they fight, I was like, even without explaining it, like, anybody who's seen the show knows that, like, yeah, of course Elliot will throw down for Reynard the Fox. They all will.
That is horrific.
I know.
I cannot express how fucking glad I am that I never, ever started watching this show, because holy fuck.
It's for the best.
There's some shows, like, people describe things to me and I'm like, why do you put yourself through that? That sounds awful.
That's how I feel about Game of Thrones, to be honest with you. It's like why I'll never watch Game of Thrones, because it's so much. Within the context of the show, I think they handled that storyline as well as you could, something that's that graphic, but it is graphic and it's painful and it's dark. So yeah, if that's not your jam, don't watch the show.
I ain't going.
But yeah, that's who Reynard the Fox is.
Great. Back to our fic. Yeah, so
Sorry.
Our Lady Underground really wants to take out Reynard the Fox, rightfully so. And yeah, Elliot is for sure like, yeah, we're going to do that. And so they have this whole plan where the White Spire is going to, because Reynard the Fox is now under like the protection of like a Royal Navy or something. So he has like a Navy ship guarding his ship. So the White Spire is going to engage with the Navy ship so that the Our Lady Underground can get to Reynard the Fox's ship. And that's the plan. And so we cut to Quentin like trying really, really fucking hard to like be prepared for all of the incoming like injuries and so forth. And he's like counting his bandages and like he's disinfecting every needle he has, and it's insane. I'm trying to see what that, because they have a whole conversation right before.
They do. They have that conversation about.
Oh yes. So Quentin is like counting his supplies or whatnot, and Elliot comes in all ready for battle and so forth, and he tells Quentin, "Hey, if you're captured by like a Royal Navy person, you are here as a prisoner. Like, do whatever you have to do to survive." And Quentin is like extremely hurt by that, because this is his adopted family now. He's a part of this, and he feels really hurt that Elliot doesn't trust him or something. Or
yeah. I
don't know exactly what Quentin's. Oh, he thinks that Elliot's being like patronizing and like is giving him permission to be a coward.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm glad you think so little of me, that's what I would do to you and to the people that I care about.
Yeah, it's just really like a sad moment. Not sad moment, but it's like miscommunication, because clearly Elliot is just so panicked at the thought of losing Quentin that he's like, listen, you were a prisoner here. I need you to survive, because that's the only way I'll have peace of mind going into this battle. But of course they don't say that, because why would they? It's fan fiction.
Right.
So then the battle ensues, and Quentin is doing his best and, like, you know, getting people taken care of as much as possible. He's been given strict orders from Elliot not to leave his cabin. Like, he's like, people will come to you, and if they can't, then it's too late anyway. And it's really rough. And someone comes in and like is like, hey, Matthews needs help, but he can't make it here. And Quentin is like, all right, let me grab my kid. Here I go. He's like, fuck you, Elliot.
I'm out.
Yeah, he takes stock of the patients he has around him, and he's like, all right, no one is gonna like bleed out in 20 minutes while I go do this. And he tells this guy, hey, just put pressure on that. I'll be back. And he runs out, finds Matthews, and Matthews is the one pirate that has been kind of the most cool reception towards Quentin. Never fully explained that she's just like a curmudgeonly old man who's like, me.
Yeah, there's like a brief moment early on where Elliot is like, so how much shit is Matthews giving Quentin? Like, I want to give him shit, but like there comes a point. And Todd's like, it's fine. Like, he's being no more of a snark, you know, than normal. So it's kind of known that he's a little curmudgeonly and likes to, you know, kind of poke the bear a little bit.
Yeah, so that makes sense. And so he gets to Matthews out across on the deck, and he sees that he has a fatal gunshot wound basically right underneath the ribs, and he's like, I can't help you, Matthews. And Matthews is like, fool, I didn't call you for my sake. And then he like gives Quentin his sword and then points up to the mast, where you turn and you see that it's Elliot by himself basically fighting all these like pirates that are coming up the fucking like net to him. And Quentin is like, uh-oh, and he runs up and he's like, ah. So then we cut to Elliot at the top of the mast, like fucking fighting people left and right. He loses his sword at one point because it gets lodged in someone's fucking throat or something, and he's not able to pull it back before it falls. And so he takes his coat off, and he has this moment where he like lets it float into the ocean gently. And then he starts pulling out these fucking knives out of everywhere, and he's like, choo, 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 choo,
Yep.
choo. It's really fucking cool. Eventually, though, because of all the fucking blood he spilt on that mast, he just slips, loses his bearing, drops his final knife. Oh no, he has one knife left, but he's lost his footing, and there's a officer right behind him who now has like his sword right at the back of his neck. He's like, all right, turn around slowly. And Elliot tries to throw like that one knife back, but the officer's like too quick, and it's not working. And so we have this whole moment where the Navy officer is like gloating, and Elliot's like, you know, my pirates are down there and they're ready to like just fuck you up if you hurt me. And the Navy King's like, well, the Navy guy's like, well, they're gonna hurt me anyway, so I might as well like die with your blood on my blade. I'll take some renown or something. And Elliot is fully like, well, this is not a bad way to die. I've done my duty. Holds out his arms like ready to go, and then just fucking Quentin came from behind and stabbed this dude through the stomach. And you're like, wow.
There's the great moment where Elliot is like, Margot, you could not have come at a better time, and then turns around and it's fucking Quentin, and he's just like, Q, what are you doing up here? But also, oh my god.
Yeah, it's literally like, oh my god, you're okay, or like, oh, thank you for that. And I'm like, what the fuck, I told you to stay in your cabin. During that whole thing, it's essentially, we know that the tide has turned for Elliot. Like, they are going to win, but Quentin had to save Elliot because Elliot was not going to win his personal fight. He was going to die.
Right.
And this fic kind of ends with like a big party, like celebration that they're having afterwards of like having done this, and like they have a moment of silence for like Matthews and the other pirates that they have lost. And Elliot like offers a toast to everyone, and offers up a toast to Quentin, who he calls his magician, which was so cute, for like popping up and saving him at the last moment. And everyone is like, fully embraces him and is like, yeah, good job, bud. And then Elliot comes over and is like, you want to come to my cabin for some drinks? And Quentin is like, ooh, perchance.
He's just like,
and
yep.
Yup. And then they go to the cabin, and they have some really banging sex. And it's great. And it ends with the whole thing of Quentin not really knowing what he's like, I don't know what we're going to do, because technically he has an agreement with Elliot that he's going to try this out for a year, and then Elliot would drop him off wherever he goes. And so Quentin is like, I don't know what's going to happen after a year, like clearly overthinking things. And Elliot's like, hey, let's just take it, save tomorrow for tomorrow. How do you feel about setting a course for the unknown? And it's so like sweet and romantic, and you're like, oh. And that is it. Jesus Christ, Erin. This is why you've got to stop sending magicians fic. The summaries always end up being so long.
That's why we're only doing one tag per episode now.
Oh my god. So that was the fic. It was wonderful. I think It is in the top 3 magician fics that you have sent me. It was really good. It was very well written. I felt like it meandered a few times. Like it wasn't as taut. Like the storyline, the plot was not as taut as I would have liked it to be. But I also understand that it was very world building. Like it was very like world building in the sense of like where fan fiction does it so beautifully, where they take these characters and they marry them into this alternative universe, and it's so beautiful to watch. So it's like a really small like oh, if I had to pick at something. So fully like 4.5 stars for me. I loved it. It was so good.
Okay, I'm so glad because I love this fic. I love this author. This author overall is like one of my favorites in the Magicians fandom. They write incredible quality fic. They have another piece that I would highly recommend people read called Our Sublime Refrain that they wrote with another person. And that's set in sort of like Mozart era Germany.
Ooh.
And Elliot is a virtuoso pianist a la Mozart. And Quentin is an incredibly skilled but unknown composer who has a hand injury and can't play. So he like gives his music to Elliot, and they end up falling in love, and it's beautiful. And the thing that this author does really well, and what all of their fics that are AU placement, historical AU specifically, do really well, is that world building. And that's what I love about their writing, is that it's impeccably researched and it's so full. Like it's such a rich universe. And I'm really glad that you enjoyed this. This story does continue on. So they tend to write stories in acts. Our Sublime Refrain, the reason I haven't sent it to you and probably won't send it to you unless we do long fics, is that it is super long because the acts were all in one thing. In this particular series, they're choosing to make it a series. So it's, you know, it's broken down into individual fics, which is helpful. But
yes,
their storytelling is very long and very world focused, and like, I live there. Like, I could not pick a different pirate fic once I read this. I was like, this is it. Like, this is the pirate fic for me.
Yeah, I can't think of any better pirate fic for you, unless Elmo himself was swashbuckling.
Right. Also, like, full disclosure, like, I know that I will be continuing to read Qualiat fic and sending you Qualiat Magicians fanfic. Season 5 was a clusterfuck, and I choose to not believe that it's a thing.
Sure. To me, it doesn't exist.
This fic takes a lot of the things that were very frustrating for fans of the show, and really just, it's like no holds barred. Like, we're killing Plover, we're killing Reynard, we're like, you know, it's gonna be, you know, fuck all that shit. Like, it's very redemptive in a lot of ways, which I value a lot, and I live very firmly in fanfic magician world now. One other thing that I wanted to mention, which was kind of cool, is that the Magicians fandom, it has always been very generous, but one of the things that happened recently was after Hale Appleman donated all of his proceeds that he made off of a virtual con through Wizard World to queer COVID relief, a couple of people in the Magicians fandom put together a FanWorks auction called Not Alone Here. And the idea was, okay, we'll auction off custom fanfics, custom edits, custom, like, I'll make a fan vid or whatever it is. So there was like 45 creators or something like that who auctioned off different pieces. And this author was one of those people. And I won that bid.
Did you really?
I did. I wanted it really, really badly because I had a very clear, and so there were a couple of people that I would have absolutely bid on. HMG fanfic, our good friend Harriet. I say that like I know her. I don't. I just comment on all of her.
We
fics.
Love you, Harriet.
We love HMG fanfic. I love that woman so much. Her fic went for like well over $150.
Yeah.
Like, people were willing to like drop some cash on a custom HMG fanfic because, like, of course, right?
Yeah.
I was like, I really want a Newsies AU.
Oh my god.
I am a simple bitch.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Listen, hey, I love it. Can I read it?
Absolutely. No, it's going to be posted. Like, it's a thing.
Yes.
So I bid and won on this author's thing. Overall, that auction, you know, credit to the organizers on this, raised somewhere around $3,700, like $30,600 something. That went directly to queer COVID relief, which went directly to paying bills to people, like queer people in crisis due to coronavirus. And Hale Appleman, bless his little heart, like, I think that boy like broke when he heard about it, because he went through and liked every single post connected to it. He went through and responded to people and like thanked people on Instagram and
so
like
nice.
gave the organizers a ton of credit, which they totally deserved. So like, I kind of wanted to send this to you because I have that AU coming and I wanted to talk about how cool fandom can be.
Yes.
And like how cool fan culture can be when we're using it for good, because that was a really fucking cool thing. And it wasn't the first time that there had been like a fanworks auction or anything like that. That wasn't like a new concept, but you know, the Magicians fandom has raised a lot of money for different charities over time, and like that's really cool to me that people can use their talent for fanfic, which is a hobby, and yield this really cool shit, like raising a bunch of money for queer people. I'm in awe of what fandom can do when it puts its mind to it, because it's a really powerful force.
Agreed. Yeah, that is so wonderful. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
That's so heartwarming. I'm so glad.
Yeah. So everyone should read mtothedestiel's fanfics, including an
upcoming Newsies AU.
Yeah, which I am screaming about. Like, I'm just really excited about it. So
that's so awesome. I'm really excited to read it and for you.
Ready.
I'm so glad that you partook.
I'm screaming. And thank you to everybody who participated in that auction, or any of the times that the Magicians fandom has raised money for any cause. Like, thank you to fandom for like giving a shit, because I think a lot of the time it's seen as very like nerdy or like ridiculous to like be passionate about things, and it could seem really crazy to like spend real money on a fanfic, right?
Yeah.
But it is such a profoundly like unifying thing, and it's a wonderful thing to experience fandom like coming together as a group of people. And like, thank God that we are all passionate and like fun and have these creative talents and like want to do good with them.
Amen. I think that's the end. I think that we cannot top that.
Yay.
What a wonderful note to end this on. And we started off so rocky,
I know.
And now here we are. Started from the bottom, now we here.
Smooth sailing.
I need you to leave.
It's not so fun when the tables are turned.
How the turntables.
How the turntables. I feel like I say that every time.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to us review all these amazing fanfics once again. Erin, if they want to keep in contact with us, where can they find us?
Somewhere. I don't know.
Great. So you can just kind of Google us and figure it out. Well, I know for sure we are on Twitter.
We are on the Twitter.
We are on Tumblr, although Erin does not update it. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. We don't post often, but if that's the easiest way for you guys to get in contact with us, we will check it.
Yep.
Please let us know if you have any tag recommendations or any fic recommendations. We are in desperate need, as evidenced by the last hour we just spent on the Magicians again. We're here again.
I regret nothing. I don't care.
No, listen, it was wonderful, but we are really wanting to branch out and like try other fandoms. Yeah. So please let us know what you want us to read and review.
For sure. Yay!
Yay! Another one done.
Another one bites the dust.
We don't have the rights to that.
Oh, bummer.
Bye.
Bye.